Welcome to this episode of Disrupt Education. I'm Peter Hostrasser. Thank you so much for hanging out. Make sure you hit that subscribe button and check out our sponsors. I have a great guest today. Melodi Sterner is here with us. Wow, I could put a whole bunch of hats on you. An e-learning specialist, curriculum developer, ed tech consultant, and a teacher, an educator. Well, let's just start here, Melodi. Thank you so much for being with us.
Yeah, thanks for having me on. I mean, that's what a teacher does. They wear so many different hats, and I really want people to realize that educators wear so many different hats. So.
They seem to keep adding them to us.
Yes.
So,
Yes.
well, with that being said, can you unpack that a little bit? What are the things that you're working on now, and inside and outside the classroom, and who are you?
Well, it's funny. I started off in school. I went to Auburn University, and I started off in school, and I really wanted to be pre-med. I wanted to be a doctor since I was little. However, it's funny. You hear the stories from my family, and they say all the while I was wanting to be a doctor, I would line my stuffed animals up in my room, and I would read them stories, and I would show them pictures, and I would talk to them about the plot. That's all I wanted to do. I even had the play doctor kits and stuff like that. I had all that, but I did more of the teaching my stuffed animals, and I would even have friends over, and we would play teacher and student, and I was always the teacher. And so, my family knew from a very young age, even though I talked about medicine, they're like, nah, she's going to be a teacher. And they were right. I went through my bachelor's degree and got it in pre-med and family and human development, and immediately jumped into my master's degree and went straight into teaching. And, it's not that school was tough for me. It's actually that to a certain point, school was actually really easy for me. And I think I got by until a certain point where it turned really hard. And I ended up having a severe learning disability in math. So that learning disability came out at a certain point, and that's when school became really hard for me. And I was diagnosed with ADHD and also an anxiety disorder. And so school got tough, and I think I let that really deflate me a little bit, because up to that point it had been so easy. I was able to do what I needed to do to get away with that. So it really drove me into helping other kids that had ADHD and struggled a little bit too. And so I went straight into my master's, got my teaching certificate and started teaching, and really take to those kids that need just a little bit of extra help. And understanding, I think, is the big piece of it in order to move forward. And I've been in education ever since then. It's this year 16, 17 for me. And I am a little burned out. I love teaching. I just don't necessarily love being a teacher right now. It's tough.
Yeah, that is a common thing right now as well. I think it has been kind of an underlying thing pre-pandemic. Wanted to ask you one question. So, as somebody who is very understanding of somebody with ADHD in my own family and high anxiety, especially with a math learning difference, where did you find that out? When did you find that out? And was that how did things change for you?
I found that out in college because, I originally went to do pre-med, and I was still stuck on the doctor of medicine path. But I had struggled in school starting about my freshman year of high school. And they tried to put me in some advanced classes, one of them being math. And I think that's when my disability really, really came out, because up to that point I had done really well. I was the average student that could grasp things. And so nothing really was standing out until it started getting hard. And I had trouble focusing and paying attention to it. Executive functioning got really tough for me. And then that's when the anxiety let loose as well. So my freshman year of college, I was blessed. My family had me go to a psychiatrist and get the formal testing done to see if I had the ADHD. And what came up in that was, oh yes, definitely ADHD, which we all knew. But along with that came a severe learning disability in math, and also the anxiety disorder. So, moving forward, I could have had some accommodations in college, but I think even back then it was a little taboo. It was not as, people weren't as understanding about it then. I'm giving my age away a little bit, as they are now. But it helped me understand myself and therefore go on and understand, other people as well.
Well, yeah, thank you for sharing that, because that's something that actually we went through as a family. here. And it is frustrating, yet there is a piece of ADHD can be your superpower, kind of
Right.
being self-aware, which is
Absolutely.
great. And now, so you mentioned a little bit about like the teacher burnout and things like that. So let's jump into that.
I think for me, the teacher burnout piece did begin well before the pandemic. I'm not going to fully blame mine on the pandemic. I think the pandemic was the straw that broke the camel's back for me.
Mm-hmm.
But I do think it kind of started a few years prior to that. And in my situation, I was head of my science department, and the standards had changed for science where I'm teaching. And the county where I was at did not put any focus on helping teachers look at those new standards and say, hey, obviously the way you're teaching's got to change. They didn't step in and help. There was no professional development. There was no guidance. It was do it on your own and make sure it's done in 1 month and make sure you're starting that. And if you don't, we're going to say something to you. And I think for me at that point, I was like, well, hey, wait a minute. I know that I've been teaching for quite some time, but we have some new people coming on board. And just because I've been teaching for a long period of time, I need help too. Professional development should be ongoing, even for some of us veteran teachers. And it felt very devaluing. It felt like there was no support. The expectation had just increased and risen, and there was nothing there to help us bridge that next gap. And so I think it started for me, which made work tough. It made relationships at work tough. It made being a leader tough, because you had changes coming from me and changes coming from leadership, but yet they also didn't want to support it. So then they didn't support you when people fought back. And it was just a mess. It was just a mess. And of course, at the end of the day, who suffers? The kids do. And that's really hard to watch. So, and then the pandemic hit, and then it made it worse.
In education, I think we all come into this job knowing it's going to be difficult, yet every year it seems to be more and more and more and more difficult, because there's more. Let's go back to the hats that we were talking about, all the different hats that are put on, and the structure of time has not changed. Yet we're still expected to do, they never, it's almost the thing like there's not a lot taken off our plates, but there's always more put on the plates. So with that being said, obviously, there is the great pivot, I guess, of all kinds of employment going on right now. But more so, I think, in healthcare and education. Is it possible? Is there a way to save innovative teachers in the classrooms? And if so, or maybe a few ideas that might start to maybe change the way that we do things a little bit to better support educators and ultimately better support our students?
I do think in supporting the students, I do think it does start with helping to support teachers. And again, this is my own opinion and my own perspective. Not everybody may agree with this, but I think one of the things that's the most frustrating for me is that from the top down, they say, oh, teachers just need more self-care. Well, where's the plan for self-care? There's no plan. And like you just said, more hats keep getting added, which then requires us to take more time away. And I feel like teachers are taking care of everybody else's kids before they're even taking care of their own family and kids. So, it's, I think for teachers now, it's don't just say you have a plan, but come up with a plan. Do something. Don't just say something, do it. Have some of that action behind it. I think support is a big thing. Teachers need support nowadays. Sometimes I feel like teachers are treated just like the kids themselves are treated. And, that respect for teachers and what all they do is just gone. And on top of that, we're also listening to a lot of parent communities. And not saying that they're always wrong, but a lot of times the people who know the best are the ones that spend the most time with the kids, and that's the teacher in the classroom. That should be who's listened to first, and they're not. And so that's just devaluing. And I think the support and finding some way to respect and having action behind your words is going to help prevent a lot more of the burnout that's going on.
I read a blog just recently, and it was how that you put it so eloquently there. It was very bluntly put as as an educator, if you get burned, as a person, if you get burned, you take care of that person, but you also take care of the fire. And in education, they take care of the person, the teacher, but then they send them back into the fire, right?
Right.
And I thought that was just a regular kind of way of repeating what you said there so eloquently. Outside, where are innovative teachers going? I know I'm looking at ed tech. I know you're into curriculum building and ed tech. What are some pivots that our innovative teachers are doing that you see or even are experiencing that are helping broader groups of youth learn in better situations?
Well, like I said, teachers wear so many hats. So there's so many things that we are actually quite qualified to go on and do. And when you're looking at a company and a corporation in the private sector, it's for me, it's good to have half of your workers are great at business and corporations and learning the pedagogical and learning how to teach others side, but then having the other half being really good at the education and the learning theories, having them, and then they're learning the corporate side. And when you have those two meshed together, it's perfect. A lot of teachers go into, instructional design. My wife went into instructional design because that allows us to continue our creativity and our passion for learning, making it engaging, and the gamification piece. Some people go on to the learning and development, which is the human resource side, where you train the trainers. So you can work with adults and you work with adult learning theories. There's some other places that have teachers come in and write questions for some of the big major tests that go on in the different countries. And teachers are the best people to really know the why behind the what and develop a good solid question because they have that basis. I think as far as for me, I am so passionate about creating curriculum, and it can be educational curriculum. It can be for a corporation. It's just, I like a challenge. So give me something that you say, I need to get this to people and they need to learn it. And they need to learn it in an effective way. How can you do it? And bam, I'll take that challenge on and I'll build it from scratch. That's where I'm passionate. And a lot of teachers, have that passion because that's just one of the many caps that we wear. So.
Yeah, that is so true. And yes, that's awesome. When we're challenged with things, in the classroom, because we're challenged with a lot of things, very quick, actionable things that come to us, and we're on very strict time frames. I think one of the things that I've noticed was when it opens up a little bit and you have some time to go deep. Wow, right? And that's a mindset change for educators as well, because we're still kind of in that bell system, if you will, but then getting out there. So there's successes for us innovative educators as well. Wanted to throw out one last question here. What do you think is going to happen to the system in the next 5 years?
Well, I heard somebody yesterday tell me that it's often said that education a lot of times is on a pendulum. And depending on where we are is on what side of the pendulum we're at, which right now is not on a great side of the pendulum. But I can honestly say, I guess to some there's truth in that. But I've been a teacher for almost 20 years. And I have not truly experienced that pendulum at all. I have seen education from my perspective decline for quite a few years, and it's a trend that is continuing to decline. That worries me, and I really feel like if they don't stop and look at what's going on and look at the number of teachers that are actually leaving and good teachers that are leaving for not even really pay. It's funny, I've not heard anybody mention pay as an issue because I think a lot of teachers don't necessarily get into it for pay. I mean, let's face it, you just don't. They're doing it more for where can I use my talents and be supported and respected and valued. If they don't start paying attention to that and they don't start doing something about that, they're going to lose all their good teachers. And it is my understanding that, a lot of people aren't getting into teaching as well. So right now, teachers may be easily replaced with some of those younger people coming out of school but eventually they're going to hit a stalemate and they're not going to be able to have anybody to replace them with. And I don't know. I mean, if they don't step up and do something, we really may have an issue for public education on our hands here where there's just not enough teachers, which is going to make the situation even worse.
Right. Yeah, I agree with that. I think there is going to be a point where, lawmakers, educational leaders, school boards, what have you, whoever are making a lot of these decisions are going to be forced to really make a tough decision. And better to, we're reactive, unfortunately, and we're not, responsive or proactive when it comes to a lot of our education systems. I know a few of them out there that are proactive, but they're few and far between. So, wanted to thank you for sharing your story, Melodi, and I appreciate your outlook on education. I agree with it. Maybe some people don't, but I tell you what, that's what Disrupt Education is all about. Hopefully, we're creating conversation around teacher burnout and understanding how we can do better in, I would say, an outdated system. So I wanted to give you a chance, though, to have let people know how they can connect with you, possibly with some of the many things that you do when you're talking about e-learning, curriculum design, and ed tech. How can people connect with you and reach out and maybe get some curriculum design or anything else that you're awesome with?
Absolutely. I mean, right now I'm trying to work with a connection that I actually made in LinkedIn, working through creating a course through Articulate. And so LinkedIn, I'm very active on. You can find me, Melodi Sterner, on LinkedIn. That's kind of the biggest place that I am right now. But LinkedIn's also great, for courses and tutorials. And so, yeah, if you connect with me there, I can help guide you there, look at some of the courses that I've taken and that have really helped me as well. So I would say LinkedIn is probably the best place right now to find me. So
there's a lot of, that's where we met. And that's what's so cool is online, especially with LinkedIn. A lot of innovative educators there. Melodi, thank you so much for your time. We appreciate it. And thanks for hanging out with us on Disrupt Education today.
Yeah. Thanks so much, Peter.
And thank you all for listening. We really appreciate you. Make sure you hit that subscribe button. And until next time, we'll talk to you later on Disrupt Education.